Hello and welcome back to the Radio 6 podcast. I'm Chambourine, joined by GoluMolu yet again, and we've got a couple of things to discuss this week. There's two relatively big things that have happened this week from Siege, so it's good. We've got some things to actually discuss, Golu, and I'm excited to go. I'm ready to get my teeth into this.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I think it's been, an interesting week with a lot of announcements coming out very, very recently. We think like, we can maybe get a recording in like last night and sort it out, and then everything kind of went crazy, and it kind of turned out that didn't work out. Because then we get to talk about it rather than having to wait a week.
Yes, exactly. It was good. It was good timing. I feel like this is the second time that this has happened. It happened with SI groups as well. This is why we kind of shifted things around. So this is why most episodes now will be on a Wednesday, with the exception of like the Six Invitational episodes, because those will be fitting around the Six Invitational, so that we can get recaps and have a bit of fun with it. But anyway, I digress. We will get into what we have to discuss this week. So the first thing is indeed the mid-season balance changes, which have released. They're out, and they're the same, pretty much. The same. We discussed it last week, so if you don't know what the changes were, go back and watch last week's episode or listen to it. We went over everything in quite big detail. We're not going to do that again. We will just go over the changes, I guess, and see what ones are actually slightly different, because there's a couple of things that were in this balance change this week but weren't in the test server last week, which is a bit of a strange one. I guess we'll start with the obvious one, which is the Tubarao change. So the Zoto canisters for Tubarao have now been decreased from 4 to 3. His canisters no longer affect Maverick's blowtorch, and also one that I'm not quite sure how it affects it is that the insulation effect from the canisters on metallic objects like reinforcements to bio shields remains for an additional 1.5 seconds after the gadget ends or is destroyed. I don't actually know, or I haven't been able to test the actual applications, but I don't know if you've had a look yet with that.
I haven't been able to test it myself. My laptop's broken, so that's been sent off for repairs. So I've been tech starved for about a week, since Saturday. Which, I mean, in theory, helped me focus on, I've also been wrapping up exams. So that helped to not get distracted by Siege or perhaps a little bit of League of Legends on the side. But now it's a bit annoying because I've just sort of sat with nothing to do and have ended up just basically spent the last 2 days binge watching The Traitors, which, to be fair, has been very entertaining. I like this change. I think the most important part of it, I mean, the 3 to 4 is nice. I think that was a pretty good change. It means that with each Zoto canister covering 12 seconds, you lose 12 seconds of coverage. You can no longer effectively hold a breach hostage for 48 seconds.
Yeah.
A little bit longer if you can time it well, right? Like if you hear the thermite charge going off and you can catch it, and then you give it like a half a second before it blows up, and then the next one slaps on it, like you can extend that time a little bit if you want to play risky. I think that just makes a lot of sense to do. No longer affecting Maverick's blowtorch. Thank you. This shouldn't have ever been a thing. It was added late as well. Like I feel like this felt to me like it wasn't sort of initially part of it, and they were like, oh, maybe it should interact with Maverick as well to like have interactions with everyone. I kind of missed the days when I remember when like Alibi came out, for example, right? And I remember seeing the graphic for both Alibi and Maestro, and it was like, these are the interactions to keep your eye out for. And it was like, for Alibi, it was like, oh, if you like get scanned like by like a jackal or something, this is what happens. Oh, if a Twitch drone zaps it, this is how that works. If a drone drives through it, this is how that works. And it was made very easily understandable, the relationships between these characters. I remember when Nook came out, and again you'd see like, how does Nook's gadget interact with all of these things? And one of them again was like the Alibi. It was like, if your gadget's active and you shoot an Alibi, this doesn't ping. And it was like the very easy to understand sort of relationship with every gadget. And I think we're starting to lose that a little bit. And obviously that's going to be the case as more and more gets added. There's always going to be these sort of interactions that you either don't foresee, or that there's just so many that to list them all is going to be more difficult. But I think affecting Maverick was a little odd, and it's nice that the counter to him now isn't also like hampered in their job to do that. Obviously movement slow is going to be a part of hurting the Maverick, but there we go.
It was a weird one. It was very strange when I first seen it, and it was the first time I'd actually see them have to put a statement out to explain how to use something. Never seen that before. of course, if you're unaware to what kind of happened, like they released Tubarao, and people were trying to make sense of the way that Maverick worked with it, and people weren't quite figuring it out because they were like, oh, it affects it, but it doesn't affect it. And then they put a kind of official statement on Twitter, and we're like, well, this is how you do it. It affects it only after if you activate it at a certain time. I don't play enough Maverick to know how much it affects it.
It was if you pulled the gadget out within Maverick's thing, it took like a second and a half before you could activate it or something like this. It was to do with whether you pulled the torch out while standing in his zone or not. Or like if you hit the zone, it would put it on like a temp delay or something. It basically meant it just took a little bit more time to pull it out, effectively. When you were actually using it, it didn't affect you at all, outside of, obviously, if you're standing on ice, you're going to be slowed. But it was fine. The actual electrical insulation effect is just, like, I think this is just an important change. I think this is a sort of thing that adds counterplay to the Zoto canister, where you're now looking at, you have this window of opportunity. If the Zoto is thrown too late, then you get an opportunity to try and blow it up before that bandit will set itself off. Effectively, it will add a 1.5 second delay to any electrocution. So the ace canister, for example, has gone from 3.2 to 4 seconds. So if the ace is on a wall for 2.5 or more seconds before the Zoto comes through, even if they put a bandit battery on the wall, you will now be able to get that off successfully. Whereas before, obviously, it would catch it off, and they could just put the battery down, and it would immediately zap it off. Now you have this small window. So it's going to rely on the Tubarao players actually being ready for it, which adds that important level of counterplay that just, frankly, didn't exist before. So that's nice. 1.5 seconds is probably a nice middle ground between you can catch people off if you're quick with it, but it is still going to be punishing enough. Especially for things like thermite charges, if you're too slow on that, obviously that's going to be a massive deal breaker, getting past those bandit batteries.
Yeah, it's going to make it much easier, a bit more balanced. I mean, and the game we watched just not long ago in Clubhouse, it was ridiculous how you were able to just completely lock off the entire bottom floor. I mean, didn't even roam. There was no roam game whatsoever. It's very rare that you see that now in Clubhouse games where there's no roam. It's just 5 people turtling down and defending the hatches with their lives, because they just knew that they could just waste, like you mentioned, 48 seconds just alone. And then you pair that with the Cade, and it starts approaching, a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and it's a crazy amount of time. So I think overall, a nicer change. I think the peculiar part is that it didn't make it into the test server last week. A lot of these changes were there that would argue you don't really need to test. Like, you don't really need to test the SMG11 losing a lot of damage, a couple of recall changes. You don't really need to test those things. I think you really only need to test interactions, different gadgets, like reworked abilities or something like that. Like the shield rework, which, by the way, just to be clear, the shield rework hasn't came in this mid-season, which again is a bit a stranger one, that it's in the test server, but it's not here. But they also did announce that it was going to be in year 9 anyway, at the start of Deep Freeze. So yeah, it's a bit of a strange one, but still.
So on the shield thing, I think it's good it's not coming in now. I think to bring the shield change in right before SI would be horrible. And I know it's opening the window for they're not bringing out this new shield change just for pro play. Yes, I'm sorry. Trickle down balancing is the correct way to balance your competitive titles. Obviously, I'm biased, but I'm also right. So it doesn't really matter. I also think that in terms of the ace change, we were talking about this last week, right? Like, this doesn't make much sense. Like, why are they nerfing attack? Now they add in this additional context, and it makes a lot of sense, because a 3.2 second detonation, like every other hard breach gadget, and this is why ace has become the big flexible pick in all levels of play, right? You see him the most in your ranked games. You see him all the time in comp. And the reason for that is twofold. One, really good gun. The AK-12 is a monster. The fact that the only thing holding it back was that it was only on fuse. There we go. So that's fine. Ace is really strong. His gadget is the safest and quickest of all of them. In terms of how you deploy it, how you use it, there's very little danger. Thermite, you have to be right up against the wall. Hard breach charges, you have to be right up against the wall. Habana, you have to pull out your thing, shoot it, reload it, and then press a button to detonate it, and the whole time you're standing out with a different gadget in your hand. Ace throws it like a smoke grenade, and it just instantly does the job. So it makes a lot of sense that he's being affected. And the effect, basically, what I'm trying to say is that with the electrical installation coming in, you need to have that extra delay on the gadget because it's the only hard reach gadget that doesn't give away its intention before it's in use. The only clue you get that a Selma is being used is when you hear the thud and it starts blowing up the wall. Everything else you get a time to react.
Yeah.
And Ace would have become so much more important for attacking lineups in a post-Tubarao world if that wasn't changed, because it would have given you a second and a half to not only hear the thing going on a wall, but then also get your Tubarao into position to throw the Zoto canister and then account for the Zoto in the air. Like, if you're standing far away, that travel time can be significant on throwing the canister. So it gives you a little bit, while still keeping Ace in this like post-installation world. He's still going to be a very good pick into the Tubarao. This just makes the counterplay to it exist if you're ready.
Yeah, it's just adds to this kind of strangeness that we got like a test server with some of the changes that it was just a bit strange. I think that probably my feedback would be that just roll out all of them or roll out the ones you specifically want to test, because it felt like it was just like maybe this was just like a separate kind of build of the game that kind of happened to have some other changes with it. Because it would have just made it, like when we discussed it last week, we were like, well, why are they changing Ace? Now it makes sense. That would have been fine, and maybe would have stopped some like let's say bad feedback, I guess, on Twitter, because there was a bit of an uproar, I guess, when they seen that was kind of the direction with it. But now looking at it, you're like, oh right, yeah, cool, I get that. That makes complete sense. Most of the other changes did make it through. The SMG11, the G36, your SPAS 15, which again is still a very weird one that they're buffing it and nerfing it at the same time. I don't know what's going on with that gun. It's a strange one. Your Thunderbird getting deployable, Maverick with the smokes, all those kind of little tweaks and stuff, they're all still coming through. Big news as well, really big news. The Tubarao Unlock cinematic no longer plays at the start of the game, so that's good. They fixed that, and now don't have to be greeted by Tubarao's face every time I open the game. So that's absolutely huge news, because that has been bugging me every time. I'm like, oh, this guy every time. And I think it made it even worse knowing how oppressive he was in game as well. It was almost like he was like just getting in my face and just offending me. Really, I was just like, guys, this is, can't get rid of this guy here. But he's been nerfed a little bit. It's nice that it came in before 6 Invitational as well. That's sweet. That'll make things a little bit better, because there was discussions that people wanted them quarantined. So yeah.
I mean, I know we weren't going to touch on it, I don't think, but like the only reason I could see him being quarantined is because of the FPS bug. I don't think you can quarantine based on balance, and I think for the whole time, like, this quarantine discussion, I think would set a really horrible precedence.
Yeah.
I think we just have to accept that sometimes things are going to be overpowered, and in worlds when things are overpowered, being able to use that well is a skill. I'm sorry, ban phase exists for a reason. If you think Tubarao is too strong to deal with, ban him. And I know that there's lots of other attacking operators who are very good. Azami, very strong. Fenrir, very strong. Solis, very strong. But if there's one that's causing you tremendous issues, if you genuinely do not think as a team you can attack through a Tubarao on certain maps, that's what the ban phase exists for. It exists so that we don't have another Lion situation. And in the nicest way possible, if we come into an event and everyone's like, oh, well, attack's so OP, it's going to be 4-2, 5-1 splits every time, that's fine. That just creates a story that we can talk about. We can talk about the teams who win being the teams that are really successful on these attacks. There's a reason why W7M going like 5-1 up on Consulate attack was crazy, because it's a map where you're not supposed to go 5-1 up on attack, and it sets them apart from the pack. It's why they're so good. So I understand the concerns about quarantine. Is it going to be boring to watch? Is it going to make it dull? I don't think it will. Siege is a very entertaining game. Even in the worst metas, we've still found ways to make it enjoyable. We sat through the Jaeger and my meta, and we didn't go, oh, Goyo's the thing propping this up. We should ban Goyo from SI. We didn't do that.
Yeah.
So that's... I think we need to like move past this point of like, oh, the balancing's so bad that we have to like take balancing into our own hands to like make these events fine. Bans exist. Use your bans well. Learn how to abuse broken stuff. Because if you can abuse broken stuff, if you find out like we can ignore the Tubarao and we can like play this in another way, and you're seeing this with innovations on like Nighthaven.
Yeah.
Like we can work around it, then that just makes you a better team. That puts you in the upper hand. Yeah. Mini rant over.
That's fair enough. To be fair, like I was never one for quarantining someone. I agree with you. I think that quarantining over someone being just because they're a strong operator wouldn't probably have been good. I think that if we do see a quarantine happen, it would be because of the FPS bugs.
Yes,
I've still
and I'm fine with
heard. I've still not heard anything about it. I haven't heard it addressed, and I haven't heard any changes about it. But people are still kind of popping off saying it's still having issues. I don't. It's a strange one. I don't know. Maybe they've got that in the works. Maybe they'll get that sorted later. But I don't know.
If they do come out and quarantine him for SI, which I don't think they will, and I'm hoping they don't. But if Tubarao is quarantined for SI, it needs to be made explicitly clear why.
Yeah.
To hold back from a precedent, because a precedent of, oh, this operator has a game-breaking bug that is going to ruin the experience of a round. Okay, I'm fine with that. Like we can take a look at that. But if it is just like, oh, people don't want to play Tubarao, let's ban it. Like, no, we're not doing this. We sat through Lion. We sat through Lion meta, right? Atlanta in like 2020. Yeah, 2020, right? Was it 20? Gosh, was it 2020? I can't remember. Liquid's win. I think it was 2020. We sat through that event, and it's the only time in history that at the in Pro League there's been an attacker-sided meta across the board. I think it was like 51% attacking win rate. That was in prime Lion Ying meta, and Liquid won that major primarily because they were very good at abusing Lion and Ying. Congratulations, you found out how to play the meta the best. You win. Why are we criticizing that? We're going, oh, they don't deserve that title because Lion was just so broken. Everyone had access to Lion. You're just bad at using the broken stuff. Just get good.
Just get good. That's the advice. That is that is kind of true. That is true to some extent. Of course, you see that the defense right now being really strong, and the defense having all these different operators that kind of change things, Zami, Solus, and stuff. And the teams that are flourishing are the teams that are playing them to the best effect, and I think that will continue to be the case, and as is usually the case with Siege. I imagine though that won't last for too long. I imagine there will be probably changes in the future. It's nice to see that the Tubarao changes came in quick, swiftly, and before SI as well. I think that will make a big difference. I think that most people are kind of saying that it feels more balanced, feels a bit better now. It's not as oppressive. And it's got a bit more kind of skill to it, because you never want things where you can just toss it at a wall and get loads of stuff out of it.
No, of course not.
You want to have a bit of risk and a kind of I guess, balance is the word you're looking for.
To highlight like what you mentioned earlier with the Wolves Saint Speedboat game on Clubhouse, that wouldn't have been able to work to the way that Wolves were going for it, because they had this idea of, we're going to have Tubarao sat in long, and we're going to wait to see, does Blue Hatch get attacked? Does Kitchen Hatch get attacked? Does Moto Hatch get attacked? And we can run and deal with wherever. And what's happening is, it was hard breach charges being deployed. The hard breach charge was pulled out, it was set down, and they were catching them just before they exploded. On new patch, like post mid-season, if you do that, the Kite Claw isn't going to electrify the wall in time, or the hatch in time, it will get opened up. So it's going to rely on you as the Tubarao to be very specific in what your objective is. You're no longer going to be this like free floating defensive piece that can respond to any play, which I think is how it should be used, and I think that's how it's designed to be used. So I like that we're seeing changes that don't affect what the gadget does, it affects how you interact with it as the attack, and that's really good to see.
As for obviously all the other changes, most of them made it through. Shield reworks, just to kind of reiterate, not in there. It's just on to get tested. It's going to launch in year 9. Season 1 is when they said that at the start of Deep Freeze. So they said at the start of the season that they were pushing it back, letting it get tested. I think that's a sensible thing to do. I'm fine with that. Don't think that is too much of an issue. Stranger thing though, console hip lean. That came out, so that is in. Mid-season, if you're a console player or if you're a controller player on PC, you can officially hip lean. I've had a couple of tries at it. It's nice. It's nice and smooth. It feels good. I think it's the best iteration they could have done. You don't have to fully ADS to hip lean. They've found a way to kind of make it work for every type of controller and not just people who have paddles on the back. I think the stranger thing is that it wasn't in the patch notes though. That's any of them, they were just like, the console hip lean is going to be coming out mid-season, season 4, year 8, and they just haven't said anything since. They've just did it, which I think is quite strange, because usually we're used to things either maybe getting delayed, like the Shield rework, or getting tested, or something like that. It's not even mentioned anywhere. It's just kind of there, and people are like, "Oh, nice! That's a nice little surprise." So yeah, it's there if you're a console player, or if you're using a controller, you get to have access to Hipleen after nearly 9 years. We've did it, folks.
Again, it's amusing to me, because I think we were talking a couple episodes ago, right? First episode of the year. Oh, communication would be great, like that transparency, that like, oh, just let us know what's going on. And for some reason, it seems to be that like Ubisoft only love sharing things they're gonna get flack for. I feel like this is a unanimous win. Like across the board, everyone benefits from this change existing. It makes the life of console players a lot easier. It's a nice little buff to be able to lean on console. It makes those who play on controller on PC's life a lot easier, because they can now finally interact with the game to a much closer extent than their keyboard counterparts. This feels like the thing I would have put at like the big announcement of the mid-season patch, because again, like I don't play on console. Does it affect me? No, but like your biggest player base is the console player base. PC and Xbox each supposedly sort of, as of when I last saw the count, each sort of exceed the PC player base. Combined, it's definitely the largest without a shadow of a doubt. I think this would have been a nice little thing to highlight.
Yeah, exactly, and it's a nice little win. Yeah, exactly. So like, it's this is what I'm saying. It's a bit of a strange one. Like, yeah, we understand we were expecting it to be there, but for it not to be, it's not even like in the notes. Like, it's not even just like a addendum. Oh, by the way, we've added Hipleen. It's not there. It's like just not mentioned at all, which is a bit of a strange one. But it is what it is. It's a win. You know, I'll take the win. But this is also like a kind of part of the communication as well. Is we want a good communication as well. Like, oh, we've done something really well. Like, and we're happy to see it. I play in controller. I'm happy to have it. Also, another thing that you probably have that's never crossed your mind, Ben, is that watching Pro League as someone who had never played on PC. Very jarring, by the way, when you don't understand what Hipleen is, because from most of your console player base have never seen any, like, don't really watch like other content, I guess, or watch like PC content. So like when he's training, like I remember the first time I ever seen it, I was like, what the hell? How is that guy leaning to the side? And I thought I was just bad at the game. Like obviously this is like 6 or 7 years ago now. The first time I watched Pro League, and I was like, guys, is this a mechanic I don't know about? But yeah, it's just, it ties it together now. I mean, brings the communities as one.
Yeah, that's something I hadn't even considered as well, because it's like when I played on console, I played on PlayStation beforehand. Oh, the laptop's not plugged in. Let's plug that in so I don't die. When I was playing on console, hold on.
I think we might have lost Ben for a sec. I can see him, but I can't hear him. Oh no. What has he done? I can see him on the camera, but I can't hear him. What's he done? I knew we were gonna have audio issues today. What has he done? I still can't hear you at all. Can you hear me? Note if you can hear me. We will pause this recording for a second. Hi, we're back. We fixed things. Ben broke his laptop. He let it die by accident. So, for those of you that have just skipped that part after I put it in the chapters, hi again. We are going to continue on from where we were. We lost Ben for a minute or so there, but we're now good to go. So, Hipleen on console, happy days, good, big W.
Yes.
Not a W though, unfortunately, is that they have disabled the in-game social menu for consoles as well, so you can't invite people through the game. You have to invite them through Ubisoft Connect. So if you're struggling to get invites, because there's been issues between platforms, it's been a nightmare trying to actually send people invites. I know that I've been struggling on PlayStation trying to get people in for Xbox games. There's a bit of a discrepancy between them, so it's very difficult to actually get it. But if you host, it should be fine on PlayStation. If you're sending them people an invite, from what I understand, you have to go to the social tab and then you have to look for the invite manually and then wait for it to come in and then do it instead of just letting it accept it through the overlay. It's a bit strange, but you can't do it through the social menu. You have to go to actual Ubisoft Connect, which is kind of crazy. But as what it is, it happens. They've been having issues with that all year. It's a bit of a strange one. It's only been happening on console. It's been happening since Christmas, so hopefully that gets resolved soon. But yeah, I don't think there's anything else we need to add for the patches, is there? Is there anything we're missing?
I think so. It was just, I never considered the hip lean stuff. Because even when I was playing on console, like, I was watching PC creators, so I just like knew it was a thing before I started playing the game. Or I think I played it on PC at a mate's house first or something. I like knew that there was a difference between the two. So I'd never thought about like, oh, if you just like have never seen the PC version of the game, it will look really odd to you.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, it's cool.
It was weird.
Nice change. Advertise when you do cool things, Ubisoft. Give yourself a little pat on the back for those.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think the changes overall have been pretty good. I haven't seen too much complaints about the gun or the guns, mainly the G36C and the SMG11. I think mostly it's been like, yeah, okay, like it was a bit annoying, but it makes sense.
Yeah. I think there's not been too many issues. There is one issue actually. They broke the lighting on Consulate. I don't know how they did that. If you're on a Consulate game, the lighting just isn't working properly. It's really dark. I don't know how they did that. Hopefully that gets fixed soon. I imagine it would be probably fixed in the next kind of week or so, because I want to get it ironed out before SI. Or imagine if we see a map quarantined, that'd be kind of crazy. Oh yeah, you can't play Consulate because it's been changed.
This is where they'd be like, oh, I guess we'll add in like, I don't know, like favela back in. It's like, oh great. I mean, if they had to do that, they can't just go to an 8-map pool, obviously. Like, I think they just have to cut a second map as well and bring it down to 7. So maybe this is finally the solution to getting Border out of the map pool, is to just break Consulate hard enough first. I think, as sad as that would be, I think I could take that trade, actually. I think I'd be happy with that. I'd hit that button.
I think I could do that as well. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah. I can't stand Border. It's not.
The real treat would have been,
please stop playing Border, guys. Please.
If they'd broken Cafe and then had to take Border out as well, like I think we'd now be in like, like the meme, and it's like society if. It's like,
yes.
I think that would be my version of that. Society if Border's taken out the map pool. Put Coastline back in.
I'm not a massive fan of Coastline. This is like, I'm not a big fan of Coastline. However, it has a thing that Border doesn't have. Because like, let's be honest, they fall into the same style. Yeah, exactly. They fall into the same category of like aggressive maps, not as much siege, like true siege played. However, at least Coastline looks good. Border, oh my god, it's like just the colors, like it just doesn't look fun. Every time I'm in it, I'm like, oh great, here we go, guys. Whereas like a nice pool party in Ibiza, I'm up for that. I love that.
Sounds good.
We all love that. Now, on to our next thing. As you well know, if you've been tuning into our podcast for a while, we like to have a little bit of discussion about Siege itself, the gaming aspect, and as well the esports. And there was a really big announcement yesterday, actually, like biggest one we've had in a bit. Bit of a strange timing, I think, but it's good that it happened. I'll always take things early. I think what has been announced is a bit of a strange. Anyway, we'll get into it. So first of all, what they announced is there was the announcement of the changes to the actual title was presenting the Blast R6 2024 season. It is only stage 1 though, and some of the point system revamps. So again, positive and negatives. Positives is that they've given us it early for the announcement itself. Is that they've given us it early, but they've also not given us some other context in like the rest of the year. And I think the reason they've did that is because the first issue with it is that it does tell us the date of when Stage 1 starts, which is the 11th of March. Now, SI finishes on the 25th of April, I believe. 25th of February. I don't know when I'm putting my
25th of Feb is the final. So it's a bit of a, it's a quick turnaround.
Yeah. Quick turnaround of like 2 weeks between them, which is... But I think that's why they've announced it early, because like they wanted to give teams plenty of time to realise that. Because if they announced the SI, then obviously you've only got 2 weeks to go. Oh, wait a minute, this all changed and stuff. So that's why they've probably put it early. But change timing for it. But overall, I think that like the actual changes, if we want to get into them, I think that they're good. I think it's nice. What's your kind of thoughts on the actual like timing of it, I guess?
I like the timing for the basically same reason. I think it's nice to know ahead of time. I'm sure if they were holding this for SI announcement, teams would have been told in advance. That's always the way these things work. I'd be surprised if teams hadn't already known that these were the changes coming up before the announcement was made. If this is the first time that they're hearing about it as well. So the time of it makes sense. I personally would have liked to see a little bit more around it, because it is, I mean, it's the majors and Stage 1. So it's setting up for Stage 1. It's setting up, this is the stage that's coming up. This is the major at the end of it, and how that will be formatted differently so that you as the viewers know going into the stage what you're sort of looking at or playing for. And they've also announced like how the qualifications for each region is going to work. So the number of spots going sort of had to be announced at the same time to know what was at stake for the Stage 1. I would have liked a full calendar. We'll get it at SI. So it's mixed. I like that we're getting some information. It lets us sort of brainstorm what we might get. But I also would have liked to see a little bit more outside of just Stage 1 for just the top tier. Again, I think that's coming at SI. So
yeah,
it's nice that we're getting some information.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. It's good that it's early. To just, I think, prefer at least one big bundle, so I know that, so we know everything else is happening. Is it 2 stages? At 3? I've seen people say, "Oh, this is definitely." I mean, we're definitely not getting 3 stages. We're definitely still on the 2 stages. I'm a big 3-stage advocate. I prefer the 3 stages. I think that overall, I think it just measures consistency better than 2 stages, because still, if you have a really bad, like BDS is always a big example. You have one bad event or bad stage, then you can miss out on the entire, rest of the year and stuff like that. If you have one bad thing, whereas if you've got 3 stages, then it rewards teams for being a bit more consistent. And if you do have one bad event, then you're not, it's not completely ruined absolutely everything. But that's to be discussed in the future. That could still be in the pipeline. We don't know how many stages that is. This is just a specific focus on one thing, just Stage 1, and like you said, the formats for majors going forward, I would imagine. I don't think there'd be any more changes to that, because the first thing they changed is the actual invitational point system, the way that it's distributed. It's now weighted more towards the majors and less towards the regional points groups, which is, I think, better. I think it's better. I think comparing it to last year as well, it does make it look a bit worse for some people, because for some people who have really benefited for it, some people have really not benefited for it. Like we were kind of talking about before we came on, was like Dev Martis tweets about it and said about how BDS technically, and in this new system, they would have qualified for SI in 14th position instead of being in 21st. Whereas like the trade-off, for instance, like Fearex and Team Bliss would be struggling to get into the 6 invitational thing. So APAC have really kind of suffered with this kind of change. I think ultimately though it is better. I think.
Yeah. The other really big team was Bleed. Bleed would not be at SI under the new one. I think they're at 14th, and they would have dropped to like 31st or something. I think, or maybe 30th. So I think 2 stages has really skewed the distribution. BDS on paper should have been at SI. I think you look at the top caliber teams in the world. But you look at the play, they came at the bottom of VUL, or towards the bottom of VUL. They, in Stage 1. They had a good Stage 2. They came second Stage 2. They had a good showing at the major. They made it to the quarterfinals. But, if we're looking at any other year, one quarterfinals appearance at one major shouldn't cement you the spot if you literally come bottom of your region in the other season, in the other stage. That third stage, if it comes back, will level things out a lot. Adding that emphasis on points at majors is really good. I'm a little torn on what this means for APAC. And not primarily because of SI. I think for SI, the points distribution looks fine. The balance between coming highly placed in your home region is the same across all regions. Whereas last season, there were some weird discrepancies where some regions would give slightly more points or less points for different placement. They've sort of put that across the board. Every region gets the same for your placement of the top 8 teams, which is great. And then obviously major points. So if APAC make it to a major and don't do well at a major, they're going to get the 45 or 55 points. So that's fine. The interesting thing for me is the change in breakdown for majors themselves. We've gone from 24 to 20 teams. And Japan and Korea are going from 3 to 2 seeds, and then LATAM's going from 2 to 1, and Asia is going from 2 to 1. I'm torn. Obviously, the 20 teams, to me, screams that we're going to 4 5-team groups. We're basically getting the SI spread for every major now. Which I think is okay. I still don't know how I feel about the reaction to this. We've seen a lot of celebration. Finally APAC are losing their spots at these events. If we're just culling teams from these events, I would rather have seen another 4 APAC teams at the event. I mean, that's just where I'm at with it. I think we're looking at this, it's like, okay, it's not like we're going, we don't need these extra spots. I think the correct thing is like the best we've had it is when we've had the sort of the mini majors in APAC, right? Where it's like they'll take the top seeded teams from each of the littler regions, right? APAC North, APAC South, Japan, Korea. They'll all send teams to this mini knockout tournament, and it'd be like 8 teams. And the teams that came first and second would go to the major. This was when, the Pro League finals at the time. This is when it was 8 teams at the Pro League finals. And it used to be 4 EU, 4 NA teams. That was the first couple of seasons. That was how it split up. Brazil gets added into a region, and EU and NA each lose a seed. They went to 3 each, and Brazil got 2 spots. And everyone was mad. People were like, this makes no sense. Brazil isn't as good as the region. And for the first 1-2 events, they did just lose in quarters. But then we started to see very quickly that they picked up pace. And then it was like, okay, well, we're looking at... And it wasn't long before the narrative was like, 3 EU teams, 3 NA teams, 2 Brazilian teams. Does NA really need that 3rd spot? Like, Brazil's outperforming NA. They didn't get that spot. Eventually what happened is we added APAC in. So each region went to 2. And again, people were like, why are APAC getting these spots? It doesn't make sense. APAC isn't as good. And it's like, we're not seeing the pattern here, right? And it took a little bit of time, but eventually with, Fnatic... And the way those 2 spots were determined was by a mini sort of playoffs within Asia, or within APAC, because you only had 2 spots. You couldn't do like one from Korea, one from Australia, because then what's the Japanese team going to do, for example? And we saw this sort of weird rotation where it was like, okay, it's going to be Mind Freak, and then became Fnatic, and then whatever the other team was, and that was always the way it was. But it led to this interesting thing where we were starting to see different teams from APAC just consistently do a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better every outing. And I mean, we eventually had Fnatic making some great runs. They obviously had that SI run where I think they came like top 8, including getting wins over like Dark Zero, putting up big games against FaZe and Empire in that group that they played, where everyone looked at that group when it got announced with FaZe, Dark Zero, Fnatic, and Empire and was like, oh, well, Fnatic are screwed, they're out. And they had a really good showing. They really showed what they can do. And we just need more opportunities like this. How's the region ever going to get better if we just keep culling their spots to events because, they didn't do that well? And we're seeing still, like, this heavy leaning in towards, like Japan had 3 seats. That's crazy. Right? Like, I'm sorry, but, like, Cyclops Gaming aren't good. Okay, Cyclops Gaming, you were caught in the crossfire of this conversation, but Cyclops Gaming were a team that had their very own unique playstyle and played very quirky Siege. and that garnered them a lot of fans, myself included. I loved watching them play. They'd pull out the Glaz, they'd pull out the Monty, they'd make the game very interesting and chaotic, and they had their little bubble of Siege that they forced you to play with them. They're not that team anymore, and that has just left them in a weird spot where they're not quite a good fundamental team, and they're not quite this weird team that makes you play their style. They're just kind of mid. They're just kind of mid. And that shows at these events. They just get grouped every time, and then we always sit there going, oh, but what if? This is a team that nearly took out Team 1 from the Mexico Major in group stage. They had to play a tiebreaker. Like, if they win one more round in that 7-2 game in the group stage, they knock the eventual winners out in groups. And since that event, they have not done anything important. So I'm not trying to just flame Japan here, but also Scars went 0-3 at the last major. They had a deep run once and then haven't showed anything since. I think it's just a case where we just need to start putting all of APAC together again, and then pulling the best talent out. Teams like Bleed, teams like Bliss, teams like DK, or D+, sorry. I think these are teams that would make it out of those events, but we'd see more variety. We'd see the teams that then deserve to make it, not just out of Japan or out of Korea, where there isn't that depth of teams. There's not enough good teams within Japan, for example, to challenge Scars and Cyclops constantly making it out. But now we're looking at SI, where the points have shifted and the way it works. Cyclops aren't going. What does this mean for other APAC teams to finally get their chance in the spotlight? And I think we need to start doing this a little bit more.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with the way you've kind of described that. I think that the thing is, and this is where them announcing just this one thing in isolation kind of bugs me a little bit, because from from the outside looking in, we just see 4 teams have lost spots, right? So it's because we went from 24 teams to 20 teams for qualified, right, for each major. Now, what that could be, because they could be changing the format of the major. So I mean, that's the only real explanation for it, really. They have to be changing it. Whether that's is it best of 3s for promotion matches, I think, that they didn't have. I can't remember. I think that they could be adding that.
They didn't have that. The only thing is that with 20 teams, I don't see how you get that 16-team Swiss bracket anymore. Do you have a 20-team Swiss bracket and do a giant one? Do you do... because the whole point was that we had 8 teams went into the play-in, 16 teams went into play-ins. 8 of those teams would come out, and they would meet the other teams in the next round, the top seeds that had already made it out. So you'd have this sort of culling of teams from those opening 16. Only 8 would go through, and they'd meet the final 8. That made sense as a format to have that in. With 20 teams, do you have 8 teams still meet them there, and the other 12 and 4 of those get eliminated? Seems less consistent. I don't know. I don't know if this means Swiss is gone, to be honest.
It might be that. The strange thing about it is, I think that the major formats were one of the best things about last year. So many different games, so many chances for people to stay there. You get second chances. You get different. It's not as cut and dry. You can have a bit of a bad start. You get some extra like they play it, because in the past, obviously, people that were in play-ins maybe weren't at the event at all in the first place. So it was nicer that way. To me, I think I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that we will probably have just the same format for all 3. For if it is just 3, so 2 majors and a SI, I think it would just be the same format for them. I think, or something similar to that.
Yeah.
Effect.
If I had to make a bet right now, I'd be saying we're looking at 4 5-team groups. For majors, the top 2 teams are going to go through. They'll play round robin within their group. The top 2 teams from each group will go to a top 8 playoffs run, quarters, semis, final. This, I think, is actually better for regions like APAC, where you're going to get to go, and we have a fascination with best of 3s in our 6. I don't say that's a criticism. That's amazing. The fact that groups for SI is all going to be best of 3s is fantastic for practice, for integrity, for just creating the best quality of games. Fantastic. I think we're going to see that into a top 2 from each group going out, 3 teams eliminated, and it will avoid this sort of messiness of like Cyclops turn up to Atlanta Major, they fly out to Atlanta, and they play a best of 1 against another APAC team, a best of 1 against Loss, and then they play a best of 3 against another APAC team. The same APAC team they lost that best of 1 to. There are teams like, let's take Pittsburgh Knights, right? Is it Pittsburgh Knights? Yeah. Pittsburgh Knights played a best of 1 against Dark Zero. So they fly, by the way, from, what, Thailand or Australia? I forget. I think Knights Australia-based, right? Either way. They fly from Australia to Atlanta. Okay. It takes them like 2 days to fly there. They then, in 1 day, play a best of 1 against Dark Zero. Obviously, they get clapped. Then a best of 1 against Fury. Okay, they get clapped. And then they fly home again. They spent more time on airports than they did on stage at an event. Like, this is insane, by the way. Like, this is ridiculous. And this system does eliminate that. And it will give a good couple days for teams to improve. If you turn up at an event and you have a shaky day 1, guess what? You're playing a best of 1, maybe 2 best of 1s. You still got the rest of that group to go through. If you're playing best of 3s, it gives you a whole nother lifeline. So I can really see teams having a good chance to actually improve, and I think this is, in the long run, going to be really good for the APAC teams that get to go to these events.
Yeah, I think that obviously this is just speculation. We don't actually know.
This is all speculation.
What the format is actually going to be. We just know we're going from 24 teams to 20 teams. There's less for some of these, the other region, well, mostly the APAC regions, with LATAM as well losing a spot. Yeah, we don't know, and this is where, like, I know it could be classed a little bit ungrateful to kind of say yes. You know, you've not got quite enough information because we've been giving some information earlier than we did last year. Last year we got it on the 22nd of February. We got all of it. So we didn't know anything going into it. So it's like a full month earlier than then. So there's that, but also like it muddies the water a little bit, and people can have to speculate as to what's going to happen and stuff. And like I would almost just prefer them to just unveil the like the format for all of it. Like if they're going to do early a separate event before SI, if they want to do it that way, or if we get 2 stages again, in my opinion, the best way to do it would have been, instead of us having a 3-month off season either side, we have our 6th Invitational, we have a month off for like a mini off season, I guess, and then we start stage 1, and that means that it gives you that month of grace period. You announce everything at SI, it gives the teams and people a month to kind of prepare and get sorted, and then stage 1 kicks off, you go for it. You only have a 2-month off season between stage 1 and 2. You do your stage 2, and then you have your longer off season, and then you have your 6th Invitational, instead of having 2-3 month off seasons, and it would be a bit more of a spread. Ideal world, just have 3 stages, but I don't know if we'll see that. Maybe, given that we're going to have less teams, maybe we'll get more stages because of that at the majors, maybe, because it'll be maybe not take up as much time, because it was a hefty event for each major. It's a big, long, there's a lot going on. It was really quite, it was kind of mad. It was like nothing for a while, and then just so much siege that just couldn't consume it for a full like 2 or 3 weeks. But yeah, I think overall, I can see the vision, I can see the changes. I'm glad that we're getting changes year on year, and we're getting updates, and we're tweaking things. That's nice. So more of that, please. That's good. Other things that have changed is the actual regional league format updates. There's been a couple of tweaks here and there. I think the big one is that Europe's going to be 1 group round robin, which is like genuinely the biggest one, because last year for some reason it was 2 groups, Group A and Group B. I don't know why we had 2 separate groups for it. It was a bit of a strange way to do it at the time. When we seen it at the time, it was a bit like, that's a bit weird. Now it's just 1, so it's just 1 league. You do that, you go into your GSL playoffs, and then you go to your major. You still have your open qualifiers, your last chance qualifiers, all that kind of juicy goodness. Just the 1 group round robin, which is what it should have been from the start. So I'm happy with that.
Yeah. We've also gotten confirmation that NA is going to be 8 teams, whereas Brazil and Europe is still 10, which I think is interesting. Nope.
Yeah.
Sorry, North America is also 10 teams. Sorry, I can't read. They've put 5 teams. So they've got 5 teams going into the last chance qualifier compared to 2, which is, again, a little bit weird to me, considering that North America has 5 teams going straight into last chance qualifier, whereas Europe has 3, Brazil has 3. So I'm not sure why they're getting that slightly different treatment on it. That's why I was under the impression it was only 8. It is in fact 10.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it?
Is that because there's less faith in a lower tiered system? Like, because four EUL teams have to go into the open qual playoffs rather than straight to last chance. Whereas in North America, it's 2 into that open playoffs and 5 into that last chance. So, I don't know. That seems a little bit odd to me that you're not having just consistency among, in theory, your top 3 regions. But, I mean, 10 teams for NA is interesting to see as well, because it means that there's clearly been someone found to take those last spots, or they're just going to give them out to teams. Because we had 8 last year.
Yeah.
So, 100 Thieves finally in Siege. TSM Returns.
Good day.
TSM Returns
Yeah.
and buys Dark Zero.
Oh no.
Bolo just drags TSM kicking and screaming back into Siege. I don't know. I think this is fine. It's nice to see what's happening in terms of the major split. I think that the major formatting being given would have been just really nice.
Yep.
You add that just last little bit, and I think this whole announcement leaves some questions, but is then very fulfilling in what it gives. Whereas it's still left with questions about what it's giving, rather than questions for the rest of the year, which are natural and fine, and we'll get that at SI.
Yep.
We still can't fully figure things out. I think it is going to be 4 groups of 5 with top 2 going to a quarters. Maybe a slightly bigger, like maybe it's top 3 and there's like some sort of double elim bracket, which I would also like to see.
Yeah.
I would also be fine with that. But majors have always been single elim for for the bracket stages. So I don't like that staying wouldn't surprise me. Overall, pretty nice announcement. It's nice to get that information. It's nice to start getting our hands on things. All the smaller regions, all doing their sort of own little thing, which I'm still fine with. I think it makes sense. Things like Oceania, for example, like it's all open qualifiers to get into the league. There's a couple spots in the league which will be reserved, and then a big open thing for the league. For a team that doesn't have, like, Oceania doesn't have a massive amount of financial support or org backing, and I think having opportunities for people to still find a way to show themselves off is really nice. So I like that they've sort of recognized that the smaller regions need their own way of putting teams on display and having their own version of the qualification system that isn't going to be as successful as it will be in larger regions. I think this is like a really nice little recognition from Blast. I think they've done a really good job on setting things up.
Yeah.
And then more information to come.
Yeah, I think, like I say, I think that would have put a bow on it. Like, I agree with you. I think if they just put in the actual major thing as well, just gave us like the full stage thing, so we can just have point A to B. Here's start, here's finish. Here's your result and end and stuff. I think that would have been a bit better than we got. But you know, any info is good info. A month early is certainly good. We were not expecting this whatsoever. We were like we mentioned right at the start, we were gonna hit record yesterday and couldn't do it yesterday, and then half an hour after this drops, and I was like, wow. Like, I was standing ready to go out the door and do something, and I was like, oh my god, they've dropped this. I need to look at this. I need to read through this and see where we're all, what they've changed and what things are kind of standing. I think the changes. I think overall it is a good change. I think that is the way to kind of go about it. I think it's a pity we might be losing some teams from majors, but I think the overall it's the vision's there. If we get 3 stages, please, can we get 3 stages? It would be certainly much more easier to take, I think.
Okay, I know I just said I think I had the format on lockdown. I think I don't. Okay, hold on. So there's how many teams go 0-3? Is it 2? It's two 0-3
so.
teams in a 16-team bracket, because you have half go 0-1, half of that go 0-2, half of that go 0-3. Okay, I think it is going to be the same as SI. Ish. No. Okay, it's going to be a weird hybrid. 4 groups of 5 teams. 5th place gets kicked out. The next, like the top 4 in each group, go into a bracket, into a GSA, not GSA, the Swiss bracket, and play a Swiss bracket, and the top 8 of the Swiss bracket go to the playoffs. Because it's and the only reason I say that is on the points distribution, there's a 17th to 20th, which is 45 points, and then 15th, 16th. And the only way that 15th, 16th compared to like a 13th through 16th makes sense is if you have 2 teams nominated below the rest of the other teams. And that's the Swiss is the one that makes sense to me. So I think that's actually going to be how it goes.
Yeah. And we still save our still have our double elim for SI and stuff. So
or like a play-in stage into that with some of the minor regions and non-first. Like I'm sure first seeds will still go straight into the Swiss stage. It'll be similar to before. There's going to be less teams added into the groups to determine like the play-ins groups effectively. I think they'll be adjusted. So it'll be something like that. It'll be some sort of adjustment of the play-ins groups. Okay, apologies for the tangent. There you go.
No, well, it's good. It's good. It's good clarification because a lot of people will be looking at us like, what does this mean? Like, what's happening? To put it bluntly, to give you like a summary, if we want to call it that, we have less teams going to majors. So this is for stage 1. Remember, this is for one singular stage. We do not have any clue if what's happening with stage 2, or 3, the mythical 3, if there is a 3. I don't know if some people floated out there saying that they think there isn't going to be one because of that. I think there's going to be 2. I just hope that the off seasons are a bit more packed with stuff to do for T1 teams that isn't just showing up as the final boss in a T2 tournament in the summer. I think that would be the nice way to do it. But anyway, to give us a kind of brief summary to kind of put up, kind of finish that off. So less teams going to the major, going from 24 to 20. A couple of spots being lost across APAC, LATAM as well. Again, it does feed into what you've said about the format changes. There'll likely be a reworking of the majors, which I don't think I was too surprised at. I think we were always going to see a little bit of a tweak to the majors because they were a bit packed at times, and I think that this is just unfortunately the way that it has to happen. Unfortunately, teams have to get cut a little bit sometimes for these things. Points distribution has been changed. It's weighted more towards the majors and less towards the regional results, which again I think is better. It's a bit tidier, it's a bit more rewarding if you do make it a major, and it's just I think a bit nicer. Changes to the formats in the each individual leagues. The notable one obviously being EU is no longer 2 groups; it's one singular group, and then I think they're pretty much the same. All 3 of the big leagues, Brazil, Europe, North America, all 3 of them are pretty much follow that same standard. One ground group robin into GSL, and then you get qualifier spots. And then the other leagues also, most of them have a similar one to that. Some of the other ones, like you said, have a slight change to them, open qualifiers to give a couple of chances. But that's really all their changes. There isn't any notes on where the majors are, which would be nice. I think we'll get that SI. That's usually how we get. We'll get the actual roadmap fleshed out for all the stages. Fingers and toes crossed for a UK major. That would be lovely. I'll put forward Edinburgh as a good host city.
Oh, really?
I don't live in Edinburgh, but it's a great city. I've lived there before. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. Nice little summer, nice little kind of spring major would be sensational. I would love that. I would certainly love that. So, blast if you're listening, that would be great.
If we're throwing cities out there, I think just purely for convenience, I think we should do it in Slough. Slough major, rep up. Please don't do a Slough major. No, I think anywhere would be good. I mean, I think London was obviously one that you could look at. Manchester or Birmingham, I think would be really good events. We had a Birmingham like Pro League finals way back when, so it could be fun to do a little return. I think it was at a Gamescom or something like that in Birmingham. In like year 1 or maybe like early year 2, so that could be fun. But yeah, I mean, I think a UK major would be nice just for like, I mean, it's really interesting. I was thinking about this the other day actually. Siege is really weird in that it has such a massive sort of UK traction. And I was trying to think why, because like you look at like the other big sort of esports. It's like CS:GO. I think there's a couple names that sort of hang around, or two, maybe a couple names that hang around, but I don't really know of anyone. League, the LEC hasn't had a UK player in it for a couple seasons now. Like we had Alfari, who was Welsh. You had like Dan, obviously Cadril, but they haven't played in seasons now, so it doesn't really exist. Overwatch League has always had a couple here and there, like, but very small numbers compared to the number of players in that league. Siege is just thriving. Like I think for last stage of EUL we were like the second most represented country.
Yeah.
So it is interesting to me.
I think there will be one. I think I'm holding out hope. Obviously, Six Invitational is now global, so it could be anywhere. Of course, we have Brazil. I think, you know what? While we're here, Ben, let's do a little bit. Let's do a prediction, right? Because they could announce this at SI, or they could announce it before it, because it's a bit rogue by the time it's. So I'm gonna try and predict the majors for next year, right?
Yeah.
I'll have a stab, right, and see if we can figure this out. So I think stage 1 is Europe. I think that's dead set. I think, and I think it'll. I'm going to be bold and say I think it's going to be in. I think it will be a UK major. I think I'm not being biased. I actually think it might be. Like I actually am going to put it as a prediction. I think that's it, right?
My second one. My copium.
My second one is that I think it'll be in NA again. I don't think that's really going to shock anyone. Take your pick. It could be any city. It could be wherever. We've had East Coast. I imagine West Coast now. Let's be honest. It could be something like that's what I think.
San Francisco, please.
Like that's what I think. I think it'll be something like that, right? I think that's what it'll be. Because generally, like they always try to ballpark it like in like sides of the planet, so that they can kind of people. If you can't make one, you can kind of make the other one, or whatever. And then I think Six Invitational goes to an APAC team, not team but region. I think it'll be Japan. I
could see that.
That's my guesstimations for major locations. Hit me with yours though.
Where do I see? I want to believe. I want to believe in the UK major. We obviously had SI in Montreal traditionally. We've had it in Sweden. And now we're having it in Brazil. So I can understand if we're taking SI on the road. I can feel that. I can see the APAC pathing. I'm trying to think within, but I'll get to that, I guess. Stage 1, I think Europe might be correct. I can't see them going to Brazil and then straight back to Brazil again. As in directly like SI to major, especially with the turnaround being so soon. I don't think it will be UK. I think
no.
Just in terms of everything going on with the UK right now, I think the UK is in a bit of a weird spot. As much as I would love to have my UK major, I think it's more likely we see something like either Spain or
I can see that,
or another Germany. I think one of those two would be something I'd be expecting quite high up there. If I had to give you a curveball, maybe something like Italy. I think it'd be something like that. I think Spain could be one that we could see. I don't think it'd be France. I just think we had a French, obviously Paris major. The first major was in France. And I know that there's some sort of stipulations with how events have to be run if they're run in France that I could see just like sort of avoiding, for example, talent or like in-person like stadium audio has to be done in French if you hold an event in France. And for just sort of that alone, I can maybe see a sort of lean away where your big voices are in English. A lot of the people traveling will understand English. Like I think that's something that does weigh on the mind of this sort of decision making. not to put any shade out there on France, and I think something like a Spain or a Germany is much more likely. Berlin has a lot of esports. We've already had a Berlin major. Do they do it in another German city? Do they return to Berlin already? I don't know. The second major, I could see them keeping to this idea of EU, NA, somewhere else in the world. Is it a bit dull to just say it's going to be a repeat of like a Copenhagen, Atlanta? It's going to be like Madrid, San Francisco. As much as I would love a San Francisco major,
that's why I don't want it. Yeah,
I would love a San Francisco major just because I really want to visit San Francisco. So
yeah.
I really want to visit San Francisco, and it'd be a nice little opportunity to sort of like tie it all in. Especially if they do it in like November, it's like peak football season. The 49ers are tickets. I really want to go to a live 49ers game in San Francisco. So if you could tie that all at the same time, Blast, like you'd have my gratitude forever. So we'll manifest it. I think if I had to, we'll manifest it. San Francisco's next. I think realistically, it's more likely to be something like a Philadelphia or a Boston, because of its time difference.
Yeah.
Being East Coast is really convenient for Europe. It's convenient still for Brazil and the rest of Latin America. It's awkward for Asia, obviously, and like Australia. I mean, it was Jake and Guz talking about how for the Atlanta Major, the final starts at like 5 a.m. in Australia, in what was it, like Melbourne or something? But either way, on the coast that is populated over on the east side of Australia, it's obviously a very awkward time. But I think Europe, it takes precedence for just size of community reasons. And they generally do a decent enough job at scheduling games on East Coast in a way that makes a lot of sense. West Coast would be a little bit harder to do. So I could see them still keeping around that area, just for logistics reasons, in terms of if you're on West Coast NA, you're still going to watch East Coast games. If you're in Europe, West Coast can be a bit of an awkward time.
Yeah, I can see that, I guess. That makes sense.
Could be cool.
New York
don't think that would happen.
I think that for predicting places, I think it's safe to say like one EU, one NA, GG. Like, and then the SI goes somewhere around the planet. Which, I think it would be an APAC. I think it'd be APAC somewhere. Which would be fine. I thought it doesn't matter too much. It's like they're gonna take it different places.
I think if they're doing SI and APAC, I think it would either be like a Tokyo or maybe Sydney. I think those would be my two cases.
Yeah.
I could see sort of either working. But I think it also will just look at sort of logistics of size of community. I think it'd be massive for APAC to get SI. In terms of what it also then just means for the respect put on the region. Because like we're giving you SI, we're giving you the championship, we're giving you the biggest event of the calendar. That'd be nice. I think that would be nice. It still wouldn't surprise me if they ended up doing SI in Montreal next year. I know we've spoken about it'd be for the 10th year, the following year, returning to Montreal as like a welcome home thing. Which I think
it would make sense.
Is like too good of an opportunity not to do, and then APAC would be the only other region that hasn't had an SI, so makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It makes Then again, it's not just speculation. This is just about fun. We're kind of discussing what they might do for in the build up to SI, because we're pretty much. But
the real take is that one of them might be in the Middle East. We might get our Middle East major. I could see something like. I could see something in the Middle East, something in like Riyadh, and then having another one in like America, for example. I could see something like that.
Or if I want to bring real heat to the table, stage one.
I don't think. Okay.
Stage two, they incorporate the Gamers 8 competition as part of it, and stage 3, we run it to NA. That's if we were.
Okay.
If I was being really, really bold, really out there with the prediction.
I don't think it will happen. I think this is like slight tangent. I think the way in which Gamers 8, formerly Gamers 8, now being renamed as the Esports World Cup, the way it's being set up, I think, is to be its own thing. In all the other games we've seen, and in R6 previously, it's always been its own big spectacle and event. And I think the idea is to keep it that way. There's a lot to discuss about the Esports World Cup, which I don't think we'll ever really get into.
No.
On terms of like a structural thing, it's not really what we're doing. We'll talk about R6 when R6 goes there again.
Yeah.
But we're here for R6, right? But I think the one thing I'll say, one little sentence to wrap it up, is I think they're setting it up as their own thing, as the Esports World Cup wants to be its own circuit. Well, not circuit, but its own landmark event. I don't think tying that in with a major makes a whole lot of sense for them. And I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense for R6 either. I could see a major being hosted somewhere in the Middle East anyway.
Yeah.
Just as a, hey, we're doing this event here. It nearly happened before.
Yeah, Twitter said no to that.
Twitter did say no to that. I think I could see them trying to do it again. I don't know if the backlash from last time is going to drive them away. But I could see that instead of maybe a European major and do that and then NA and then have a SI somewhere else. That'd be my curveball, I guess, because I guess I already said like maybe get like an Italy out there, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely discussions to be had. Again, just speculation. We're just having a bit of fun trying to have a guess as to what there is in the pipeline. But what certainly is in the pipeline is Six Invitational, and people have kind of discussed the run up to Six Invitational has been a bit quiet for like years. It's always been like this. There's always been like not as much build up. This is the first time in a while I can remember a lot of build up happening on Twitter. There's like individual stuff happening though.
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to be quiet, right? Because it's all the unfortunate nature of having a major at the end of a stage and then having this pause, because there's a lot of excitement around Atlanta. Then we have nothing to do for 3 months, and then we have our major. And doing it in February, that Christmas period basically being a write-off, is part of that reasoning. It's nice to see a bit of traction picking up and people starting to talk about it. And I think this sort of drip feeding of information we've got throughout going up to it, I think has helped for that.
Yeah. The other thing to like that I want to highlight about that is like I don't know if people have been kind of keeping track of it, but like the R6 Esports account has been posting individual interviews with different players, different teams in the run up to it. And it's not something I've seen a lot of in the past. It's not something we get to kind of look at, which is always something that we've been asked for. I know you've been a big advocate for that. Let people chat, let players kind of showcase their personalities and stuff. We even had like a mention of the cosplay community as well. There's been like a whole lot of build up actually. I mean, they basically gave us the groups on the 17th of January, and since then we've had cosplayers mentioned. We have had an interview with Doki. There's Iconic, Cyber as well from FaZe. I mean, just the most kind of recent one was Canadian yesterday, and then today is Hertz from W7M. So there's a lot of build up actually. So I'm excited. It's good. Yeah. You don't get to see it that all, but we've had discussions in the past as to we want a bit more hype going into these events, and I know that Twitter's always popping off asking for a bit more hype, and it was almost like they dropped that artwork on the 11th of January and we're like, bet, let's just go in, and we've just had non-stop content about it, which is great, and I love it. So and good. It's going to be so good. It is going to be so good just in a build up to SI, of course, which kicks off in just a couple of weeks' time. Just starts off on the 13th. Yeah. Of February, so we are about 3 weeks away from liftoff at this point in time. We still have a few things to talk about before we get there, though. Of course, we have our kind of wrap up on the kind of T2 area that's coming next week. As I kind of looked ahead from us, because some of that's wrapped up as well, like South Beach in Europe, and there's some other things that have been happening as well. They're now wrapping up this weekend, so Stay tuned. There is still some Siege getting played this weekend across a couple of regions. So if you're looking for something to watch, you can do that. But is there anything you want to add before we wrap things up, Golu?
No, I think we'll be back next week for other stuff. It's been cool seeing the amount of content coming through. I hope they keep it up to SI. It's your flagship product from the esports world. It's great to see more and more of a spotlight put on it. It's great to see content. Now teams just need to pick it up. Teams, start putting out content with your players.
Yeah, that's what we want to see. If everybody gets involved, we will have a good time. But that's going to be it from us for today, for today's episode. We've had some tech issues. So, but we got through it. We've managed to get it actually finished off. So, thanks for all the support so far. We're approaching now, going to be on our 7th episode next week. So we've done quite a few episodes. We're glad that we've got at least consistent people listening. Get involved on Twitter. Make sure that you're asking us to talk about things. If there's anything you want to hear our opinions on, make sure you kind of drop it into the comments, drop it into our DMs, whatever. You know where to find us. It's not a secret at this point. But yeah, we're going to wrap things up. That's going to be it from us for this week, and we will see you next week for some more podcast action. See you later. Bye bye.